Chapter 21, Saddle and Picket Rope. Throughout the mountain and foothills of western North America, from the dusty mesquite of Mexico to the Arctic Circle, almost all the good big game country is at least 2 or 3 days' travel from the railroad or the nearest auto or wagon road. Outdoorsmen have to pack their outfit and supplies into these regions, and the most common method of transport is with pack animals. A large pack mule will freight considerably more than a horse unless it happens to not be in the mood. Pound for pound, so will a burro. But among the disadvantages to being encountered with both mules and burros is that it is almost impossible to make most of them ford rivers and even fair-sized creeks, or to transverse really boggy country, with the result that their use is confined almost exclusively to desert and high dry regions. For general carrying on hunting trips, the more amenable pack horse is commonly used. How much one can pack day after day depends on a combination of facts and imponderables, having to do with terrain, weather, feed, equipment, type of load, skill of the human packers, and the temperament and aptitude of the individual animal. An average horse, to generalize, will pack about 120 pounds for weeks at a time along the steep trails to be expected in high country. This minimum can many times be increased. To load a horse beyond its limit for very long, however, makes for all kinds of trouble, including sore backs. This limiting factor, whatever it may be, where you are going, will indicate the number of pack animals needed to handle a particular outfit. Pack horses and mules can be expected to travel from 5 to 25 miles a day in western mountains, again depending on such factors as country, trails, and weather. Along fairly decent going, the usual pack train we've ridden with can average about 15 miles a day, starting about 10 a.m. and stopping about 4 p.m. Burros are much slower. However, the location of good grazing is what generally dictates the selection of the camping sites, and thereby the duration of each day's travel. Most of the really fine mountain hunting country in the United States lies within the forest reserves, where luring horse trails wind along nearly every valley and across the passes. Throughout much of these western spaces, plenty of grazing exists. It is necessary that camps be chosen where there is good horse feed. Otherwise, the animals, even though hobbled, when turned loose at night, will stray for miles in search of fodder. When there is ample grass, it is possible, even in wilder regions, to take a pack train through almost any country where steep cliffs, peaks, very heavy timber, and downstuff do not bar the way. Almost all the forests, except on the thick southern slopes of mountains, are open enough to ride through anywhere. Even where you do not see a good trail, your horse will often recognize one, especially if it is in familiar terrain. The memory of a good horse. Some years ago, I was hunting on the eastern slope of the Coast Range Mountains in British Columbia, and one afternoon I camped by a fine spring. I had with me a good pinto saddle mount named Chili and a wise old pack horse called Lobo. As was my custom, I chopped a saucer out of a fallen log and placed some salt and sugar in it for the horses. It kept them around camp and made it easy to catch them. Next morning I broke camp and went north for 3 miles through a flat covered thickly with jack pines. Mule deer had worn a game trail among the greenness of the conifers, and this dim path was the only easy way across the bench. Neither I nor the horse had ever been in this country before, but 2 months later I came back from the opposite direction, wishing to camp at the same spring. There was now a foot of snow on the ground, the game trail was absolutely indistinguishable, and the jack pines looked unfamiliar in the heaviness of snow. I got off Chili and put him in the lead and drove the 2 horses ahead of me. Without hesitation, Chili took that return trail for the 3 miles straight to the campsite, went up to the fallen log, nosed the snow off it, and started to lick. Another time, I was in the Rockies of northwestern Alberta with Stan Clark, who's now down by Jasper Park, but who formerly had a spread up the Halfway River a few miles across country from Hudson Hope. We had a saddle mount apiece and 4 pack animals. We were driving the horses in front of us along a fairly reasonable route when we came to a deep mud hole with the large stump just above it on the left. The leading horse left the trail and detoured the mud hole up above the stump. 2 weeks later, we were following the same way back. During the fortnight, the mud hole had dried out. Across where it had been was a plainly marked way, tracked down hard by the feet of much game. Yet each horse, as it came to it, turned off to the right, took the same detour around the stump. None of this is meant to imply that you can rely on a horse to keep you from getting lost any more than you can a dog, except in both own neighborhoods. Even there, the ability of various horses in this respect differ markedly. Chinook, a sorrel mare one of us rides all the time, waits for an opportunity to circle very, very gradually. If you're just daydreaming along through the bush in cloudy weather, you're apt to glance around and find yourself heading back to camp. Chinook, with the almost undetectable aid of her nose, follows a back trail almost hoofprint for hoofprint when given her head. On the other hand, the wife of one of us has a saddle mare at the present time that gets turned around as quickly as the greenest tenderfoot. In a way, this is a redeeming characteristic. The reluctance with which a lot of cayuses leave their home ground becomes an expression at times. Cooper, once you've trotted her into the bush and circled her around a few times, travels with equal enthusiasm in any direction. She's as anxious as the next mare to get back to the bundle of oats, which she knows will be waiting. But even when night is nearing, if you just sit motionless in the saddle when approaching a reasonably familiar trail, about half the time Cooper will quicken her pace along the wrong turning. Pack train. The prospective sheep and goat shooter who has not previously hunted with a pack train should understand certain details about the horse and his load and some of the procedures of traveling, camping, and hunting. These differ somewhat in various localities and among different outfits. Basically, though, they're much the same in that they are hitched to the proposition that keeping the horses in good condition is the primary essential. You're already under canvas, let us assume. The party is going to break camp and travel on this day. At the first quickening of dawn, the wrangler starts out to find and drive in the animals, which were turned loose the afternoon before to feed. Most of them probably have hobbles, strapping their front legs together. The bells buckled around their necks have been unstoppered so that they will clang, bong, and peal the melody of their whereabouts. The horses may be feeding anywhere from a few yards to 5 miles from camp. Nevertheless, although the experienced wrangler usually keeps an ear open, if before dark they start to drift too far, he'll often edge around and whoop them back. His own horse, if he can manage it, is staked out nearby in a lush patch of grass at the end of the picket rope. Trouble comes when the animals are not all out of the same bunch. Then, in particular, they may be scattered in several groups. It can take a good half of the morning before the wrangler has located them all. Every once in a while, delays of this kind must be expected. If a particular knothead becomes too much of a nuisance, though, it may be tied short to a tree all one night so that it will keep so busy eating the next it won't have time to wander. When the wrangler drives the horses into camp, everyone on hand except the cook turns out to catch them, tie them to trees, and saddle them. The cook, in the meantime, has piled out at dawn, although not with any bright song of joy because of various air currents put into motion by the blending of night with day. It's colder now than it was during total blackness. He maybe deposits a dead old pine stump, saved for the purpose, in the center of the last fading embers of the campfire. This gives him a blaze like the light of a pressure lantern, and it also helps to get him some warmth into his extended fingers. Pretty soon he's thawed out enough to shove the coffee pot grumbly into the heat. He then begins banging pots and pans around a little more expressively than necessary. One especially gregarious trail cook we know has a habit of carrying on a one-sided conversation so provocative that anyone snoozing nearby is apt to hear himself joining in, whereupon a grin spreads over the cook's face, for all he really wanted was company, and now he keeps exchanging remarks with such robust good humor that further sleep is impossible. The coffee smells too good, anyway, particularly when joined by the aromas of flippers and tiger. Sometimes one of these devices work. Sometimes none of these devices work. Then the cook, with a certain grim righteousness, sets about personally arousing one and all in time for hot porridge, bacon, eggs, flapjack, fruit, and your choice between steaming pots of coffee and tea. A feminine member of the party he may call the just once that most trail cooks insist upon by the simple device of opening the valve of her air mattress. The cook then sees to it that everyone gets his lunch, in many cases put up the night before. He washes and dries the dishes, he packs the kitchen and the food panniers making sure that what he needs for the next meal is where he can get at it first. He may then turn to with the others to roll up the tents so that when the wrangler gets back with the horses, everything will be ready to be packed on them. Panniers. There is no standard size for panniers. Most of them, the best ones, measure on the outside about 22 inches long, 15 inches high, and 9 inches deep from front to back. Packers prefer the bottom angled back so the pannier will not stick out so much on the animal and bump into trees. 6 inches wide is functional. The top, bottom, and sides can be made of 3/8 or 1/2 inch waterproof plywood and the ends of 7/8 inch pine or spruce. To prevent mice or chipmunks from getting at the contents, the pannier can be lined with tin or with copper screening. Notches on the front edges are made for the lash ropes that secure the pannier on the sawbuck saddle to ride in. Hinges and fasteners can be either metal or leather. I have 2 of these panniers. One is for kitchen and eating utensils. It will hold my nest of 3 aluminum kettles, fry pans, plates, cups, bowls, and cans of salt, sugar, pepper, butter, and lard. The other takes my personal and photographic equipment. Tent, sleeping bag, air mattress, and a big wash and mixing pan go on top. Various camp outfitters sell panniers, or kayaks, as they're also called, made of fiberboard and plywood. You can also build them yourself, so most bushmen do. Some are made of the heaviest canvas, especially picturesque, although not as practical as wooden varieties, are those made of tough, untanned cowhide laced together with the hair outside. The sportsman. An outfitter will usually assign 1 pack horse to each sportsman for carrying his personal outfit. Your rifle should go in a heavy leather scabbard slung the way you find handiest in your saddle horse. Camera equipment is also usually stowed on the riding horse, so are your binoculars. Saddlebags are handy for this purpose in open country. If you're sidling around through trees, anything breakable is better wrapped in your extra shirt or with other such clothing and tied securely behind the pommel. Watch it too when you stop, for a lot of cayuses have a habit of occasionally rolling over when saddled. Fishing rods can be a problem. Often the best idea is to have a stout aluminum or fiber case for them and to trust their packing to the outfitter. Sleeping bag and air mattress may be rolled in a tarpaulin about 8 feet square or in a small tent or shelter fabric and tied with a rope. Such a bundle will measure about 3 feet by 1.5 feet. Rather flat rather than round, it will be some 7 or 8 inches thick. It can thus be conveniently laid atop the saddle and panniers as a top pack. The pack cover of heavy waterproof canvas spread over the load before the diamond or other hitch is thrown will protect the equipment from rain and from snagging in the bush. If you're on your own, the axe in its sheath will want to go where it will be both safe and readily accessible. On a pack horse, it can generally be shoved under the lashings with the handle facing backwards and with the sheath strapped over a rope as an additional precaution against loss. Most outfitters you'll travel with will furnish you with 2 panniers to which to carry extra clothing and other items for your individual use. Generally speaking, you place the most often wanted articles on the top. Shirts and such you use to wrap breakables. Possessions such as binoculars and telescopes with which dampness can raise hob you tie securely within slightly inflated waterproof bags. We used to use the oilskin variety, but now lighter and far tighter plastic containers are cheaper and not as bulky. Equal weights must, as nearly as possible, be placed in each pannier so that the 2 will balance on the animal. Desirable maximum weights vary. 50 pounds is often the limit. Immediately after breakfast, when each sportsman packs his 2 panniers and bundles up his bedroll, he makes sure that he has everything on his person that he'll want during that day. He checks to see if his rifle, clothing, and camera are ready to secure on his riding saddle. Packing. 2 experienced men working together will pack a horse in about 10 minutes when everything is at hand. From this, you can figure approximately how long it will take to get on the trail after the animals arrive. Every sportsman should learn how to pack. You can never tell when it may be necessary for you to lend a hand. Besides, one day you may want to get away on such a trip by yourself. Anyone can learn to throw the necessary lashes and hitches, diamond and 1 or 2 of the often ample simpler knots, such as a half diamond and squaw, in 2 or 3 lessons if you'll do a little practicing with a piece of string during spare moments. A good woolen blanket or an adequate pad goes on first. This must be smooth and soft. Next comes a saddle that fits the individual animal. It should have breast and breech straps and the double cinches. Before you tighten these last, put a finger under the front center of the blanket and lift it slightly along the spine. Sling on the panniers, secure them, lay what you're going to across or between them, and spread your pack over in place. Then, with a strong half-inch rope braided to the ring of a canvas pack cinch, which at its other extremity has something like a large wooden hook, bind down the entire load. When the outfit is ready to hit the trail, the lead rope of all but the front horse is tied to the pack of the one ahead with a knot that can instantly be jerked free if something goes wrong. The wrangler holds the lead of the foremost animal and rides off. Or the horses are turned loose, the wrangler starts ahead, and the cook closes up behind. Occasionally a horse bolts out of line, and the rear man urges him back. This he does slowly and quietly so as not to excite the string. Some days may be full of all kinds of trouble, spooked horses, turning packs, snagged or bogged down animals. Little distance will then be covered. On other days, we've traversed as much as a rousting 30 miles. The wrangler is the man to say where the next camp shall be made. He is responsible for the horses, and he must stop where feed is good, where there's water, and where he can hold the animals reasonably close. Saddle horse. Usually the sportsman and his guide will start off right after breakfast on their own horses, either to hunt or just to ride through the most interesting country. Often they'll arrive at the next camp after the train has pulled in to find the shelters already pitched, and the cook may be sour-faced again because someone has had some jocko remark to make about the mulligan that is simmering. On some occasion, too, the sportsman will travel with the pack train out front where he can spot game and keep out of the dust. In either event, he should see to the saddling of his own horse. The natural tendency when saddling, especially with the heavier of the western jobs, is to heave the girth rings and stirrups too high. This causes him to bang noisily against such tender spots as legs, joints, and ribs. A lot of resultant shying and sidestepping can be avoided by swinging these just high enough to land easily on your mount's back, where they'll slide down smoothly. You can then reach underneath and finish cinching without going around to the offside to straighten things up. A lot of outdoorsmen planning trophy hunts in the West don't have much opportunity to familiarize themselves beforehand with horses, or with the design and function of the riding gear characteristic to that part of the continent. Maybe the following few hints, which we have picked up from time to time, usually the hard way, will give these individuals a little better idea of what lies ahead of them. When you're ready to get on, particularly if you and the horse are strangers, the main thing is to be in control. Horses differ. With a very few, you'll have to rein the head either in or around. Others begin to fret and sometimes to pitch if you're that heavy on bit. Mostly a firm but light hold on the lines will be sufficient. Unless you want to be bequeathed the deadest old plug in the remuda the next day out, don't, like a lot of dudes, clamber up into the saddle and then yell for someone to hand you the dang blasted reins. A smooth and sure way of getting into the western saddle you'll probably be using is to take the lines in the left hand, stand by the head of the cayuse facing the tail, grasp the mane or saddle horn with the left hand, put the left foot lightly in the stirrup, grab the horn securely with the right hand, and then swing aboard in one fluid motion while using the horn as a pivot. This natural arc is spoiled, as you can readily understand, by the awkward, if common, mistake of grabbing the back of the saddle with the right hand. The knees are not used in Western riding as they are meant to be in the East. With the Western saddle, therefore, you'll want the stirrups long enough so that you'll barely clear the seat when standing in them. You'll then be able to rely on balance and on the grip of your thighs, employing your partly tense knees and maybe ankles as springs to absorb any roughness that would otherwise be jarring or jolting. Here again, there is a tremendous difference in horses. Without exaggeration, some actually trot more smoothly than others walk. Keep the lines low ordinarily, although if a knothead is inclined to pitch, you may want to curb that impulse holding his head high. Don't fall into the practice very common among dudes of knotting the ends of the reins together so as soon as you climb on a strange horse. Then, if anything goes wrong, or even if you hustle off to take a shot at game, you're apt to find yourself plumb afoot. The times when you want to ride reinless, twist them a couple of times around the horn and maybe top off with a single half hitch. Then, if anything goes amuck, the lines will soon be dangling to halt the horse if he has been broken to ground rein, or to impede it long enough for you to have a chance of easing around and catching it. Clothing. When you're traveling with horses, you hit a lot of extremes. Hours of hard climbing often immediately followed by other hours of just sitting in the leather. Having the right sort of clothing, therefore, is at least as important as it is in other forms of wilderness living. A man doing the relatively hard work of hunting perspires freely, and his clothing becomes more or less wet. Cotton garments are best for all hot and warm climates, in that they are coolest. The perspiration which they absorb, however, makes them so cold that they chill one as soon as this function slows down. When cotton is warm, the outdoorsman should have a rub down and change of dry clothing as soon as he gets back to camp. This is not difficult in warm climates. In excessively hot weather, furthermore, the exudation of perspiration does not slow too perceptibly, and such a change is not so necessary. But if during the rigors of strenuous hunting or traveling you have occasion to stop for long in a wind, sitting on a lookout perhaps, or riding atop an extended ridge, then cotton garments are not too good. For a cold or even a chilly climate, the clothing should be wool throughout. Wool also gets wet from perspiration, but much of the water passes through it to be evaporated on the outside. Wet wool, moreover, does not feel particularly cold. It does not chill like wet cotton, except when the wind is blowing very strongly. Under these circumstances, a closely woven but still porous outside jacket of thin cotton may be needed to slip on as a windbreak. Wool is warm chiefly because of the insulating effect of the dead air held in the numerous tiny spaces among the fibers. A pair of light wool garments are warmer than a heavy one of the same total weight because of the additional air contained between the two of them. In extremely frigid weather, one can freeze quickly in wet clothing. It is very necessary under such circumstances to keep from perspiring excessively. This you can easily accomplish by shedding layers of clothing as you warm up, thereby always remaining moderately cool. The horseman or other outdoorsman in warm or tropical countries may well wear cotton underwear and khaki trousers. Roomy breeches made for walking and for outdoor living still have their advantages under certain conditions. The day of the knee-constricted riding breeches, however, is far past if you figure on doing any amount of traveling afoot. For convenient and safe wilderness wear, bush trousers should be stagged 3 inches shorter than city trousers, should have no cuff to collect debris, and should not be baggy. In lieu of khaki, many individuals find blue denim work pants are very good once they're softened up. In a country with many thorns and prickles, canvas leggings and even briar-proof pants may be desirable. While on a horse, you may want leather chaps. Either a khaki or a light flannel shirt may be worn as desired. The bird shooter usually wears a hunting coat of khaki or light canvas with many pockets, including a large game compartment in the rear. In very hot weather, this coat may be worn immediately over an undershirt. On cooler days, a khaki shirt, or in frostier climates, one or more woolen shirts may be worn under it. For the bird hunter, the hunting coat takes the place of the rucksack, and in its large pockets he carries such necessities as his supply of shells. The desert and plains hunter of big game will dispense with a coat and will wear either a khaki or a wool flannel shirt. He should also have a rucksack in which, among other daily necessities, he can carry a canteen of water if he leaves his horse for a stalk. If he wears a khaki shirt, he should carry a flannel shirt in his rucksack. Most desert country gets surprisingly cool as soon as the sun goes down, and the heat, with little moisture in the atmosphere to beat it back, radiates out of the rocks and sand. The hunter of big game in cooler regions often makes the mistake of wearing extremely heavy clothing. Except for the canoe hunter whose guide does all the paddling, the late fall duck hunter who does not stir around much, and a horseman who sits still in the saddle for long periods, this can be an extremely serious error. Very heavy garments induce perspiration, waste energy, and result in unnecessary and even dangerous coldness when one halts. Very heavy trousers will gall between the legs on a long hike. Sensible clothing under whose conditions often consist the light or medium weight wool underwear, wool trousers of about the same weight you would wear in a city such as New York in winter, and a medium weight wool shirt. This is enough for any man actively hunting on foot in temperatures above zero. Leave that heavy mackinaw with your horse, canoe, or other conveyance. In the rucksack should be carried another wool shirt and perhaps a light waterproofed cotton windbreaking jacket. This last should be allowed enough air to circulate through it to keep body moisture from collecting. The shirt can be donned when you stop or when the single shirt is not warm enough. The jacket will be appreciated in rain, snow, or blustery wind. Some covering for the hands may be necessary. Light leather gloves make horse handling more of a pleasure on frosty mornings when buckled leather is stiff and tightened knots are sometimes encased in frustrating blobs of muddy ice. Heavy lined ones are usually enough for medium cold. Woolen gloves covered with roomy leather mittens are better for extreme cold. A more practical scheme than wearing one-finger mitts, which in congealing going leave your trigger finger stiff, is to tie your regular mitts together by a long thong that loops over the shoulders behind the neck. In case a sudden shot at game presents itself, jerk the mitt off the master hand with the teeth. The thong keeps it from becoming lost, and you have a limber and unencumbered hand for operating the rifle. On your own, the first thing that horses said about teaching you when you begin to handle them is that they're all individuals, some intelligent, a few knot-headed, most friendly, a handful downright cantankerous, others aloof, nearly all quicker on the home trail, but a scattering equally ambitious in any direction, the majority placid, and too many just plain skittish. Certain others intrinsically often the most gentle of all are just downright dramatic. The competent saddle horse is in particular a wonderful companion and an excellent sentinel as well. We've both shot considerable game whose presence was first sensed by our mounts. Once you become accustomed to hunting with a good horse, there's nothing else quite like it. There is no reason why two men reasonably accustomed to handling horses, to camping, and to traveling with a map should not have an extended pack horse trip by themselves. It means a lot of work, for if you hunt persistently during the day, you will have cooking, tackle repairs, and odd jobs to take care of, sometimes late into the night. Horse wrangling too will frequently interfere with a planned stalk. Two men can rent, or often more cheaply buy, 4 horses and live the life for months at a time. One pack horse will be able to carry all the outfit needed. The other, if you plan carefully, will have no trouble in handling enough food for a couple of men for a month. As for taking care of your horses, lone trappers and prospectors often travel with 6 or 7. In many states and in some of the provinces of Canada, however, the law requires a non-resident sportsman to be accompanied by a registered or licensed guide. 2. Before outdoorsmen attempt such trips on their own, they should make sure by experiments in countries safely close to civilization that they are competent. Generally speaking, furthermore, they must be of such a temperament that they will find as much satisfaction and delight in riding, packing, doing camp work, and attending to cooking as in hunting and fishing.